talking to Brian before here, and I actually think it's pretty. Like, it's kind of nice to have this out here. The roads aren't that bad, so we're Minnesotans, let's gut it out. So anyway, we have a good amount of people here, obviously, and so we got a nice buzz in the room. I love that. So thank you for being here, all of our members, guests, the people that signed up online. I appreciate that. My name is Aaron Eggert. I am the founder of Coalition9. Coalition9, I'm going to have actually one of you talk about Coalition9 and what you like about it. Maybe even Stef when she introduces herself. So I'm founder of this organization. Those of you that don't know what Coalition9 is, ask somebody at your table and ask them why they're a member. That has enough. That will say enough. I'm really proud of what we've built. We're well over 170 members, 18 groups. We put on amazing events like this, and to me, it means the world that you're all here and helping build this community. I want to thank a few people for making today happen and events like this and just our community in general. First of all, I want to thank our community supporters. So our community supporters are people that support us all year long, and you'll see their logo flashed up here occasionally, along with our event partners and our food and beverage partners. But specifically our community supporters, like I said, they support us all year long and help make our community thrive. And help keep your member dues low, so keep that in mind as well. So I want to thank All-in-One Accounting. We don't have anybody from All-in-One Accounting here today. Boulay, Mike Crabtree, yeah. Turbo, everybody needs a friend named Turbo. If you don't have a friend named Turbo, go introduce yourself. Carlson Partners, Tim Olson, there you go, hey buddy, he's by the door. eWealth Partners, Brian Adamek, yeah. Awesome, thank you for being here. Insperity, Sally Beal, all right, thank you, great partner. Seiler Law, Scott and James. Scott, James, thank you very much. Flagship Bank, who's anyone from Flagship today? Kevin Heglin's like kind of like associated, so, but Flagship Bank, Andy Shornack is a great partner. And then finally, last but absolutely not least, United Healthcare, Adam Raymer. Yeah, single. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Shocker. The people that are making today's event happen are our event partners. What we typically do is we want to make sure that they have a little bit of time just to tell you who they are. Gardner Builders was unable to be here, along with USI wasn't able to be here. Best, right? And so I just want to give them a shout out for being an event partner and making today happen. I'm going to let Stef introduce herself because she's also an event partner for this event. And then Tony Feo from Oggi Talent. Tony, you want to come on up here and just say a little bit about Oggi?
Always great being first. This is always a fun little thing to do, especially being first. I really appreciate Aaron, and we're really happy to be here. I guess just from a starting point, just to break the ice a little bit, how many people here are fluent in Spanish? Just a show of hands. Got a couple. Fluent in French? A couple more. I love this. Drill down a little bit. Fluent in Italian.
Functionally illiterate.
Functionally illiterate. Perfect. I'm not quite sure how all of us have gotten in more trouble, like during high school when we were skipping our language classes, but I think we're all in the kind of the same boat. But I want to teach you one word today, and that is Oggi. My name is Tony Beal. I work for Oggi Talent. Oggi in Italian translates to today. So Oggi Talent is about servicing and connecting people that are important and meaningful today. We are a placement firm for senior level finance and accounting and creative and marketing consultants, as well as an executive search firm across all the different spectrums and verticals within a business. We're super proud to be here. I've recently joined C9 Group, and it's been a phenomenal ride for the last 4 or 5 months. And thank you, Aaron, for putting this on.
All right, thank you, Tony. I also want to thank our food and beverage partners that helped make this. So the food, so this is totally my style. Like, I love finding little places that are, we're going to challenge them a little bit. It's a place called Spitz. Catering is not their main jam. They have an amazing restaurant. Their food is outstanding, Mediterranean. I don't like doing the same old, I get tired of box lunches and all that same crap. So this is an amazing opportunity to give them a little bit of notoriety for what they do. His name is Chris that owns it. He killed it with this thing today. So I just want to say thank you to those guys, even though nobody's here. So the food and beverage partners that made that happen. So Vantage Financial, Brian Bagley, yep, thank you. And then SafeNet Consulting, Kelly Schneider. All right, there we go, way back. Thank you so much for your partnership on that. And then this amazing space. So Jackson Schwartz is one of our members. I've been friends with him for many years. The same haircut and facial hair, and we don't ever talk about that, but whatever. So Jackson, if you come up, just talk a little bit about the space, and then also I'd like just a little bit about Hennepin Made.
Thanks, Aaron. Thanks everybody for showing up today. I'm the founder of Hennepin Made, which is a blown glass lighting company and glass house. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about what we do, but related to why all of you showed up here today. So Aaron asked me to talk today, and I was thinking, what can I say about preparing for the 2023 economy? Not a lot, because that is not my expertise. We got an amazing panel who's going to talk about that, and that's the reason we showed up, right? I think there's another reason we showed up, which is really what we are an expert in, which is hospitality and connection. We showed up today, and I'm assuming this is true for a lot of you, it's true for me, because we wanted to give some energy, and we wanted to receive some energy. Did you all notice when Aaron was like, hey, shut up, stop talking, we got to start the event? Nobody listened? It was awesome, right? That's the energy that we showed up for, and he's sitting there going, hey, I got the microphone, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. And everybody's so focused on the person right in front of them. That's really at the essence of what we try to create here at Glass House. That's why we do this, that's why we care, that's why we built this space. I started as a glass blower, went to art school, knew nothing about the business world or the economy, and we were able to build that company into about 30 employees. There's 6 glass blowers working right behind this wall today. At the end of the event today, you'll have an opportunity to be able to tour that and see some of that in action. But I've always loved connecting with people. And so we bought this building in 2016. We really wanted to become the catalyst for this neighborhood. As our managing director, Alyssa, just said to me, to some new people she was talking about, we're like the speakeasy of event spaces, because you got to really work to get here. A lot of construction, you got crappy roads, and it's hard to park once the lot's full. So we're super happy that you guys made the effort today to connect with one another, bring that energy, give that energy. And I'm super excited that Aaron has been able to gather all these amazing people here today. So I'll be conducting some of the tours at the end, and enjoy your time here. And I have one ask, we need a little help. If you know people that have event needs coming up, please send them our way. We just invested a lot of resources and have an amazing staff, and we really want to put them to work and keep them busy. So if you get in a conversation about events, or if somebody wanted to throw an event, think of us. It'd really be helpful. All right, enjoy the event.
Awesome. Okay, one more thing. So we're gonna gather people over here for the tours after the event is done. So I will say that if you want to see some really cool glass blowing, they do an amazing job back there. It'll probably take 20 minutes. Okay, last thing. After the event is done today, you're gonna get a survey text message to you from our virtual concierge, Cece. Cece was just launched last week. This is a great opportunity for you to get introduced to Cece. What it is it's a blend between artificial and human intelligence that is able to just take a proactive and a passive approach to how we engage with our members. This is another opportunity for you to give feedback on what we can do better for future events, and then tell us what we did awesome. And also, we take a passive approach to be able to be there for our members. So we want to be able to be that concierge. So if we just had it this morning, somebody's looking for an accountant. So I have a few people that I would think of, but I want Cece to be able to do the work, pull that data from our database, and be able to connect, make meaningful connections between members. And that's what Coalition9 is all about, changing business 9 leaders at a time. Okay, enough from me. Stef Tschida. So I'm so thrilled to have Stef do this. When we decided to put this panel together, we have an amazing amount of brain power at this panel, and to lead this, I could not think of a better person. Stef is also an event partner, so thank you so much for that, and I'm going to hand the mic over to you.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. Glad to meet you all and see you all today. I'm Stef Tschida. I run Tschida Communications. We help companies use clear, effective communication to build relationships with those who matter to their success, which helps them grow. So super excited to have these amazing panelists here today. Here's how today's going to work. We're going to start out by asking them a few prepared questions. And then we'll open it up for all of you to ask questions as well. Then we'll spend a little time at our tables talking through some questions you have there, and then sharing, like, did more questions for the panel come out of that? What were your ahas? What are you thinking about yourselves when it comes to the coming year? We want to make this a conversation to the extent possible. So I'll just start us out with a couple questions for these guys, and then we'll run the mics around and let you have an opportunity as well. First, though, let me start just by introducing these three. So first we have Brian Adamek, who is the founder and wealth advisor of eWealth Partners. They provide entrepreneurial and business owner clients with financial advice that impacts their whole net worth, not just stock market investments. Brian is married and has 5 kids under the age of 7. Who knew that was possible? Yay, Brian. All right, that's a feat. I could ask like 10 questions about that, but I won't. Okay. Melissa Johnston is a co-founder of EntreBank, the first new community bank opening in the 7-state region in the last 15 years. She serves as the Chief Credit Officer and Chief Marketing Officer, and chairs the Officer Credit Committee and Marketing Committee. She's active in the nonprofit sector and coaches her kids' sports year-round. Hi, it's glad to have you here, Melissa. And then Mike Crabtree has been with Boulay since 2000 and has been a partner in their tax department since 2014. He keeps clients and his colleagues up to date on tax law changes and provides in-depth research and advice on complex tax planning and deal structuring questions. So hopefully it's very apparent to all of you why these folks have been assembled to help us figure out what the heck's going to happen with the 2023 economy. So please join me in welcoming them. Thanks you guys for being here. All right, so we're just going to kick off with maybe one of the most basic but obvious questions ever, which is, what is the number one question each of you is getting from your clients right now with everything going on? Brian, let's start with you.
The number one question that I'm getting is definitely market-based. We do planning. Markets are a big piece of the planning that we do, and as you guys are probably likely aware, the markets have been really beat up year to date, and that volatility, can put some people on edge. And so the question typically is, what do we do about the portfolio? And how this relates to the economy is the markets are usually a leading indicator with the economy being lagging. So I would like to think that the worst is behind us. I'm not calling like the market has bottomed out, but the market is trying to predict what is going to happen to the economy. So that is, in simple words, is just stay invested, don't do anything stupid, but it's just a matter of don't let your emotions get involved in events like this. Now, there's some planning around as far as some concerns of more of just short-term, long-term piece of it, but the number one question typically is what's going on with the markets. We could unpack that for the whole panel here, but just the piece I'd like to relay is just that the market is usually leading, the economy is usually lagging. So again, I would just make sure that you stay invested. That's one of the questions. There's a few others, but maybe we should toss it.
Yeah, absolutely. Melissa, how about you? What's the number one question you're getting from your clients?
Number one question I'm getting from my clients, besides what made you want to start a bank, is, and I could talk about that for the whole panel too, but what's happening with interest rates? So how many of you have changed your behavior the last 2 months or so based on interest rates? Are you going to a company or individual, a handful of you? Okay. So yeah, that's the biggest question I get, and I spent my whole morning talking to clients and prospects about, should I do a 3-year rate? Should I do a 5-year, 7-year? What's going to happen? And so we subscribe to a number of different publications, and the one that we find most reliable is the Baker Group. And that culminates Goldman Sachs, JP, and a few of the other big ones. And what we're anticipating as it relates to short-term rates is for the month of December, we probably are going to anticipate another 0.5% hike, but then it's going to slow down. So inflation predictions are down for 2023 based on all the measures, and so hopefully January and March's meeting, we're only going to see 25 basis point hikes, and now that is short-term rates. So it's very confusing for folks that want to buy a building and are getting a 5-year fixed rate. They're like, oh my gosh, my rate's going to be 1% higher in March than it is right now. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, we have what's called an inverted yield curve right now, so long-term rates are actually a little bit more affordable than short-term rates, which is really hard to understand when I'm giving a proposal to someone and they say my line of credit rate is actually higher than my 5-year fixed rate. But that is a tool the government's using right now to help us with inflation. And it also is a tool I think we'll talk about a little bit further on is as it relates to the recession now with short-term rates rising to ward off inflation, that is a lever that can be pulled if we hit a recessionary time to help us get back and to try to increase spending again. So it is painful in the short term, but it's necessary and it can be a helpful tool if we hit a point that we need it. So.
Okay, Mike, how about you?
The question I probably get the most is what's going to happen to tax rates. And unfortunately, my crystal ball stopped working many, many years ago, so I don't know for sure. And I guess my answer to that probably would have been different a couple weeks ago. I don't see anything really happening on the federal side now. It looks as though the House will probably switch over. We don't know, of course, but it seems to be looking that way. And the Senate stays the way it was. There probably won't be any significant tax legislation, that at least enough to change rates in 23 is my guess. On the state side, though, it's really a different answer. I think I was very surprised with what happened on the Minnesota side, and I think a lot of people were. And having all three players in the legislative game be on the same team is going to open the door to some potential changes there. What those might be, I'm not sure, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. I think at the end of the day, a lot of us are wondering, is the coming year a good time for owners to invest in their businesses, and why or why not? Brian, how would you start us out with that?
I actually don't know the answer to that. I know you guys are looking for advice up here, but I think one piece of this is, in an uncertain economy, you just want to make, and this goes on the personal finance side of it too, is you just want to make sure you have your cash reserves, right? And so you want to, there's different rules of thumb, and on the business side, there's like the working capital piece, but you just want to make sure that you have that cash built up. And again, you should argue that just on the personal side through emergency funding. Now, typically in downturns, we'll see layoffs, and there's maybe just because I'm an optimist, is like that might mean that it might be a little easier to hire that top talent, and so that could be something to consider. But kind of just getting back to the whole cash piece of it, and you'll see more of this. I was checking Twitter earlier this morning, and there was so much of it is just to make sure that you have enough in cash for what I call so much of what we do working with business owners, and again on the business, but then also on the personal side, is to figure out those oh shit moments as far as like what happens if business is impacted, where do we go? And then looking at the liquidity options of savings to investments to bank line of credit. And so really, I think a lot of the planning and the creativity is just saying, okay, what happens if it does play out this way? Where do we go?
Yeah, well, I think it's always a good time to invest in your business. It's just what's the most sensible way to structure that investment and what are you going to invest in? What we've seen a lot of folks investing in the last year or so have been more on the automation side and software and how to make things more automated. I mean, you've seen now these pop-ups where you go to a brewery and instead of having a server come by, you get a bracelet and you're pouring yourself, right? So some of those types of investments where companies are learning how to rely less on people and using more data, becoming more efficient. So we're talking to a lot of clients about what that looks like in their business. I mean, we're seeing it with Aaron and Coalition9 just being really thoughtful about using technology where you still have the relationship and the connection with people, but there's tools that we can use to build in efficiencies and to gain artificial intelligence that can help us run our businesses better. So I think it's still a great time to invest in those types of tools. I think for businesses that are really reliant on consumer spending, to be thoughtful about what that investment looks like. I think that consumers, I saw some hand raise and not sure if that's decisions changing based on individuals or businesses, but I think in general consumers are going to be a little bit more touchy on what they're going to be spending their money on, a little bit more thoughtful, and so paying attention to the folks in the retail space. Now we're looking at that, and then also the home buying space. So now is probably not a good time for home builders to build a lot of speculative housing. I mean, pretty much anything you read, you're seeing new home builds are down. There's just not a lot of movement on that side, and folks aren't used to over 7% interest rates for 30-year mortgages. I mean, that is the historical interest rate, but I think there's sticker shock for a lot of folks in that space. So yeah, so I think it's sort of industry dependent from that standpoint, but we are still having a lot of conversations with our clients and prospects about thoughtful investments and what makes sense for them. And again, it goes back to interest rates too. So if you can still lock in at a fixed rate for 5 to 10 years with that starts with a 6, I mean, that's still a good rate and still could make a lot of sense for your business. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Mike, how about you? Is 2023 a good year to invest in a business?
Probably. From a tax perspective, investment is oftentimes tied to depreciation and depreciation rules and the ability to get immediate tax benefit for investing in equipment and stuff like that. For a long time, for many years now, we've had access to bonus depreciation, which allows us to buy a new piece of equipment and immediately write it off. And we've gotten used to that. Those rules are they're going to start phasing out beginning next year. So instead of being able to bonus 100%, I think it's just 80%, or it's going to kind of taper off theoretically. There is a lot of talk about having that extended, and it might be extended, and Congress likes to play games with that a lot, and so that, I mean, you can't be sure that that's going to happen, but that is one thing impacting investment that we might see.
Melissa, I know you get asked by your clients all the time, are we in a recession? Are we not? What are you telling them?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I picture this diagram in the Wall Street Journal that says, will the real recessionary measure please stand up? Like, nobody knows, right? Are we in a recession? Are we in a recession? Will we be in a recession? And it really, I mean, there's so many different ways to measure it. I think in general, when I consider the factors that other organizations are playing and making, I do feel like there is a looming slowdown. I mean, we just met with the FDIC Regional Ombudsman is his name, and he warned us that an increase in FDIC insurance rates were coming because they're anticipating banks having to take losses on some of their loan portfolio. So it's some of those kind of macroeconomic pieces. I think we're far from a recession like we had in 2008 through 2011. I mean, the fundamentals of that recession were so off and clear and blatant financial related. I mean, this one's different in so many ways that I think that there's a slowdown coming. I think that we're going to rebound more quickly, and I do think the Fed has tools now that they can use that they didn't have in place previously that will make things less painful. So again, I don't have all the answers, but I do think there's a slowdown. So just making sure in all of our businesses, getting back to cash, that the balance sheets are still in a good spot, and you know, we're advising clients, even if you can get 100% equipment financing for your business, is that the right thing to do? Does it make sense to put in a little bit of cash so you're not incredibly leveraged here as we go into a potential slowdown?
I'll add to that, just again, on the stock market side, there's probably a decent chance that the worst has already happened. And so it's trying to talk to clients and say, okay, let's, you know, not recreate the wheel, the strategy on this piece, but likely where you're going to be impacted in the next, whatever, 12, 24, 36 months is how the recession is going to change your pay, change your income. Then that's what we, again, have to kind of lay out what that could look like. And then that kind of plays into, all right, if this is going to impact our pay, then what does that mean to tax rates if they do change or if they don't change? And so again, it's the on the market portfolio side that's probably behind us, but now it's like, okay, now it just actually might, you know, impact the dollars that we take home, and how do we think through that?
Fantastic. Mike, I know you referenced the election a little bit, and we've all been obviously inundated with all of the information surrounding the election. Is there any more you'd say about just like the implication from what happened last week? You touched on it, but just any more you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. On the federal side, I think, like I said before, having the two houses on different teams is going to probably prevent anything really major from happening. That's not the case in St. Paul. One of the things that we've been dealing with at my firm and our clients is over the last number of years, the Minnesota legislature has kind of gotten in the habit of adapting to federal tax law changes like way after the fact and conforming their laws to the federal changes in a way that really it complicates things. Because it's a Minnesota tax law is based on federal tax law, but it's based on the federal code of a particular date, and it doesn't automatically change when the federal law changes. So the legislature has to go in and manually adjust it. And what they've been doing for the last number of years is waiting to the last minute, saving that big tax bill to the very end, so to use it as leverage in those last minute negotiations as the curtain is falling on the session, right? And then this last year, they got burned because they got down to the end. They had an agreement on an omnibus tax bill, and then it didn't make it through because of the last minute juggling of stuff. And then they fought all summer. Well, should we have a special session? All this stuff.
It might be interjected just because it's real fun on the planning side when they actually make tax code changes after the fact. They've done that like into the next tax season, or if they try to push this like the final week. And so a lot of times we're just making our best guess. We did a tax strategy early in first quarter. I thought it was a pretty safe bet that this was going to pass on the federal and state side. It didn't. Now it's unlikely. And so who knows, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it can be incredibly frustrating. And so we're hoping, I mean, the one silver lining to having, you know, the DFL have all three seats is that maybe they can make those changes earlier and adapt on a timely basis now that they don't have to bargain about it.
Interesting. Okay, so Melissa, for those of us who are looking at maybe doing a business loan to invest in our business in the coming year, what are some tips you're giving to your clients about how to structure those in a smart way?
Sure, yeah, and that is my favorite conversation, actually. I know Stef and I talked about this, is I have to answer the interest rate question, even though that's my least favorite question and I get it the most often. My favorite question is, here's what I'm looking to do, how should I structure it? Because it's just like putting together a puzzle for me. It's, you know, we look at what are your historical cash flow, what does your P&L look like, some of those kind of tax pieces, and then Then it's forecasting the future. You know, what is your budget for fiscal 2023 and beyond? And I know that's hard to do. I mean, we have to do it as a bank, and we're in the middle of that right now. What do we anticipate our clients are going to need for loans? Well, that's tricky. So it's those conversations where we work with our clients to put together a budget and cash flow, and then think through, you know, what is the use of funds, look at the interest rate. I mean, there's so many factors that come into play, but I'll give you an example. I'm working with a financial advisor right now, and he has the opportunity to buy another practice, and that advisor wants to get 3 lump sums, and in January of the following 3 years. So he's like, well, maybe I should just he came to me asking for a line of credit. And so it's like, well, you could do a line of credit, but you know, here's kind of what your rate would be. And if you think about the fact that you have these monthly or these annual payments due at specific times, you're going to be paying on that line of credit, and it's going to be a variable rate. What if we did a draw loan, for example, and we'll give you, you know, a certain amount of time to do those disbursements? And so kind of thinking through that, where we can lock in the interest rate now and then have a specified time for him to advance on that to make those payments. And so there's a lot of factors that come into play, a lot of things that we think through, and it's also looking at, you know, the blend. Typically it doesn't make a lot of sense to have all long-term debt, all short-term debt. It's a combination of, you know, having a line of credit or access to a line of credit, having some kind of midterm debt pieces in there, and then potentially if you need equipment or you want to buy a building, then you have that longer term debt, so you kind of have your layered financial structure. But it really depends on the nature of the business and the cash flow.
One more question before we open it up to all of you. Brian, when you're helping your clients think about how to manage and plan for risk in the coming year, what are you telling them?
Yeah, and actually, let me just jump quickly back to this last election, because there is, when we go to the breakouts, you'll see some sheets that I brought. And the long and short of that piece is the markets don't care who the president is, if Republican or Democrat, same with House or Senate. You'll see a chart that basically markets are upward trending regardless of who's in office. And so I get that question quite a bit, you know, whether they agree with or that's who they voted for. Like in the end, the markets really don't care. So that's the first piece that you'll see that chart. Now to manage the risk piece, again, it's kind of just looking at your liquidity, or what I say, like, oh shit, options. And so you want to do that on the business side, is understanding your projected cash flow, and then have your reserves. But you're going to do the same thing on the personal side. So if you are in some illiquid assets, you know, if that's real estate or even your own business, then like what do you do in those gotcha moments? And so again, I think it's just a matter of understanding, like, where do you go? And sometimes, and when you know, times are tough and the business owner has to go into the retirement account, like, give yourself permission to do that. That's not the first place that we want to go, but know that is also a liquid asset more so than, you know, real estate. But just trying to understand kind of the different buckets that you have, and really it should be somewhat similar strategy of what you're doing within the business to what you're doing on the personal side.
Hey, questions for these guys? I'll bring you the mic. Who wants to start? What are you wondering about?
They all just want to talk.
We can do that. If there's no questions at the moment, let's just go to our tables. We've got a couple questions for you to consider together and just discuss at your tables. And let me just read those to you guys. They're over here, sorry. So we want you to talk together about what are you perceiving as some of the biggest challenges personally and professionally for yourselves heading into the upcoming year. And then what's one thing that you're optimistic about, right? It can be so easy to talk about the things that are scary and uncertain about the coming year. What are you feeling optimistic about? And then we'll ask for some feedback in the room and just to hear from you all. We'll just give you a couple minutes to talk amongst yourselves. probably got some new LinkedIn contacts coming up today, and I just think that's really special. So I just want to celebrate what that has been the last 25 minutes or so, and thank you all for engaging in that so wonderfully. We were all wandering around, for those of you who might have experienced that, and we're listening for things that we thought the whole group could benefit from. One really cool thing I heard that has been absent from the discussion up till now is like, okay, what about the human beings who are powering all of this, who are feeling uncertainty but are still driving all these companies to do the things that we're doing in an uncertain environment? And I heard this really cool term that was new to me called outcomes-based job description. Has anyone heard that term besides Lana? I had not, and I do internal comms, and I had not heard that. So I asked Lana if she'd just like enlighten us and educate us a little bit on that.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is something one of my mentors talked to me about when we were writing some job descriptions and when I was taking a new role, saying, okay, how do you know what you're supposed to do? Why does your job exist for the company? And I was like, well, here's the job description. I was like, no, they're telling you how to do your job. Like, why does it exist? Because if you can't say why it exists, then you shouldn't be employed there. So switching to, like we were talking about software engineers, because that's a really hot space right now with all of the inflation and then layoffs. And instead of saying, can you write all these JIRA tasks? Can you follow your JIRA tasks and write this code? Flipping to, can you write code to solve business problems? Your job exists to solve business problems. Or for instance, I'm in sales, and if I post a job description for a salesperson that's 2 pages long, how many salespeople are going to read that? 0. If I write an outcome that says my job is to find and maintain clients that will sustain and grow our business, and here are some additional outcomes that flow up to that, well, now I'm excited about that. I have a job that moves the company forward, and every day when I sit at my desk, I can say, these are my 3 outcomes. Does this work line up to it? Because if it doesn't, I shouldn't be doing it. And then it keeps it very clear and also motivating and exciting. Oh yeah, flexibility, yeah. As a mom of 2 young boys who don't know how to be quiet or understand that the door closes, like I don't know if other kids learned that during COVID, like mom's in a meeting, mine skipped that, not possible. But having an outcome, I can take my kids to school and come and sit down and focus on my outcome all day and not feel like I have to be tied to my desk or constrained by outside forces, because at the end of the day, if, for instance, my boss came to me and was like, what'd you do today? Well, I did my outcomes. Do you have questions? Because I can pull my receipts, right? Like I can show you the way I move the needle, which covers over some of those things that can be nervousnesses, right? Like in the first 90 days, your new hire should be able to sit at the desk, and if they're the only one in the company and they have to decide what they're going to do for the day, they should be able to figure it out if they know what their outcomes are.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Lana. Any other observations or just interesting pieces you all talked about that you think the group could benefit from? Or any other questions that you want to ask the panel or that have come to mind as you've been talking here?
Hey, Stef, I actually have a question myself for the group. So as I was talking to this group here, I was trying to play it out in my own head, and I couldn't come up with how you would solve this. But for the business owners, or it could be, I guess, non-business owner too, but like we've had a high inflation over the last, 12 months or even longer. And oftentimes, like major corporations are pretty quick that they know how to adjust pricing, and usually it's the small businesses that kind of fail to do that like with speed. And so now they might be behind on their pricing and they want to increase their pricing, and now we're heading into this looming recession. Like, what do you do? Does anybody have an example of how they're thinking through that if they kind of are behind on their own pricing and now going into this potential recession, or if we're in it already?
Jason's got something. I don't know how to walk in shoes like this anymore. Sorry, it's going to take me a second.
I would do it, and then I would focus on the value for it. I think if people have a pretty clear idea of what they're getting, and it's very clear how you're tying that to success or ROI or however the business defines that, I think that makes that much easier.
Thoughts or reactions to that?
I actually love that answer, is the output, the value, and let them tell you if they think that's worth it or not.
Lisa has a question.
I have a question more about the global economy and around Credit Suisse and what's happening with some of those larger banks that hold so much of the global funds, in addition to the recent news about FTX and the crypto market. And how are these major global economic issues going to trickle down as much as you have sightline into that?
Yeah, I peeked at the Wall Street Journal and I'm like, wow, that's overwhelming. Skip that article. Yeah, I saw some headlines, and it's one of those things where it does trickle down, and I think it touches on some of the pieces we already mentioned previously, where it creates some instability. I think the Federal Reserve here and just the supply chain and the money supply in general in the United States is very stable relative to other countries. I know people get really excited about crypto and blockchain and all this, and I think there's a place for that, especially in third world countries where their currency isn't as stable and there's a lot of risk. And as it relates to specific events, I haven't studied it enough to really be thoughtful. I just know there is kind of some ancillary impacts, and we talk to our clients a lot about just maintaining fundamentals of your business and trying to eliminate sensible risk when you can, but not getting to the point where you have to uncover every single stone to make a decision. I mean, you're just going to be paralyzed. And so we just talk with our clients about, talking to all their advisors as it relates to tax and financial planning and banking and making sensible risks to grow without putting, a ton of your, personal collateral and other things like that on the line. So it's, I just don't study it enough to give you anything precise.
So Khalik and his table were having a really interesting conversation about just skills, the way that skill sets are evolving, the impact of the pandemic, and I just asked if he'd share a little bit about that too.
Hey, can you hear me? Okay, cool. All right, perfect, thank you. Khalik Consulting, what we were discussing here was more like work culture and the future of what that looks like, but also considering how far we're reaching back, especially considering our youth, because I do a lot of public policy work, housing initiatives, and workforce development. And what I've been noticing in those spaces is that there's not enough companies that are fostering that stewardship relationship with young people that can create the workforce that we actually need for the future, especially if we're considering where technology is heading, a lot of the layoffs that are happening with big Fortune 500 companies. And how are we prepping young people to take over in those spaces and developing the right education outcomes and skill sets and mentorship that can be provided from these companies that can actually help them in the future, but also help them now, whether that's internships, whether those are just providing those type of opportunities. So those are things that I would love everybody to consider in this space.
Anything else anyone wanted to share just from your table discussions? Heard lots of good chatter. Anything you guys want to close out with?
Stef, our table talked a little bit about wages and talent, and I know that was kind of part of that discussion as well, but I know that's a big question too, is just how much are we willing to pay people? And so I don't have the answer, but I did do a little research on that wage pressure is going down, so maybe you're feeling that a little bit yourselves as well. What employees are asking for to maintain their cost of living isn't quite so high as it has been. This year wages increased between 7.5% to 8.5% based on a lot of different measures, and it looks like next year the forecasts are going to be more in that kind of normalized 3 to 4% range, so that feels good. But that's going to continue to be a huge conversation in terms of maintaining talent and culture, and I heard, I think, Aaron's podcast, someone, instead of saying soft skills, just are calling it more human skills. I think human skills are going to come into those decisions related to talent a lot more than they have in the past.
Awesome. Okay, give me a sec.
All right. Hello, my name is Zifa. Okay, my name is Zifa. I own a business called Zifa's Boutique. It's an Afrocentric fashion accessory, homeware, and beds, all the good stuff. My ask is not a question per se, but I know some of us small business owners. I have a group that I usually, connect with. We've been looking for mentorship, okay? Because I started my business now 2 years, and even though I have a background in there, it's been 9.5. What is it? Okay. Okay. Sorry. So we are looking for mentorship. There's a lot of small businesses, especially who started a business during this pandemic, that are out here. It would be nice to have some type of mentorship, and that can help support and kind of, you don't know what you don't know when you're a small business owner. And so I guess it's an ask. I don't know who is here that have the opportunity in their companies and who are able to help mentor a small, business coming up. And if you don't, and that would be a really good talk in this type of spaces to kind of have, even if it's one business a year that your company kind of help support, and just kind of take a look at their business. Okay, maybe you should do this, do that, and just kind of give them homework, and so then it kind of help for us coming up to be able to win in other spaces, and it will be a good. Obviously, a tax write-off for your own business as well, but just one thing that I wanted to bring up. And if you know of a company or if your business does that, please say hi to me on your way out. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, I know we're coming up on time. I just want to thank all of you for your wonderful engagement, your questions, your conversation, and please join me in thanking our amazing panel, Brian, Mike, Melissa. Thanks, guys. Maybe just in closing, to end on a positive note, right? We talked about at the tables, like what it makes you feel optimistic despite all the uncertainty ahead. If each of you could just give us like a quick flash round, a word that like describes why you're optimistic for the coming year, like end us on a high note. Brian, go ahead.
Well, I kind of said it, but I feel pretty dang strong that 12 months from now, the market will be in a better position. So that's something to be optimistic about. Speaking from the business owner entrepreneur, I think this is the time that we are really challenged, and I'm ready for the challenge, and I think like only the strong survive. So like that makes me kind of feel good about like I think I will only come out stronger from this. So.
Yeah, I think what I'm optimistic about is even if there is a slowdown or a recession, I don't think banks are going to stop lending or pull back on lending like we had to in the last recession. I mean, I remember painful times of asking borrowers to pay back their loans. I mean, and we weren't lending. It was like, no, we don't want any loans. Don't make any loans. It was like, we just have to deal with what we have. And I just don't see that. I think banks are structured differently. I think banks have more capital. I think the government is more supportive, especially of community banks, and so I just don't see credit stalling out like it had in the previous recession, even if there is a slowdown. So that sounds negative, but I'm optimistic about it.
Excellent. I guess my optimism is more specific, I guess, that I'm thinking that we'll have less gridlock in St. Paul this year. Looking for the silver lining. So I'm optimistic about things happening at the legislature. Thanks.
All right, thanks again, you guys. I'll turn it back over to Aaron.